All right, traders, welcome to today's end of day recap. It is Tuesday, December 4th, and a heck of a sell off today. Let me just go over the numbers because they were pretty alarming to the downside. Let's start with S&P. That was down 3.2%. The Qs were down 3.8%. The IWM, which continues to trail. Besides that little counter trend rally that we had last week, down 4.3%. Some of the sectors, the banks. I put this out yesterday. By the way, this will be a little bit shorter than normal video because I have to run to a webinar. But I was talking about this yesterday. That the banks from where we opened yesterday, they had really taken a hit from the open. They were the worst performing group, so they had some continuation. But I thought that was a little bit revealing yesterday, and that utilities were the only group in a very green tape to go higher. Kind of just told you something didn't look right. So the bank's KRE is down 5.4%, just very hit very hard. So I'm looking at a couple names that reported after the close. Very small bounce, and I would say in the indices overall, very small bounce today, a little bit after midday. So yeah, here's the kind of the worst of the worst. This, and keep in mind in the IWM, if you're wondering. If you look at the components of small caps, why were the small caps down so much? The financials are the biggest weight in IWM. So when KRE falls 5.5%, it's going to bring down the small cap ETF. The home builders were also down a lot today. Toll Brothers had an interesting conference call. Some interesting comments that from the conference call. There were some comments about. Some positives and negatives, basically. They were saying that they're being affected by slower pace of Chinese buyers in California. I thought that was interesting. They also said that they're kind of right in the market for, so a little bit different than the rest of the home builders because they are a luxury home builder. They're in a lot of high-end markets, but they mentioned that they can capitalize off of when Amazon moves because they do have part of their location where they operate is both around the New York City area, so they should be able to capitalize in Queens as well as in the DC area. But yeah, so there's some positives and negatives. I would probably post this a little bit later. But I thought pretty interesting conference call. So that was going on as well. So this is a clear break. This actually looked like a little bit of coiling between these two moving averages. But if you kind of look at the pretty full participation day to the downside, yeah, I mean, we could not get over this. I think we talked about this in last night's video just briefly, that we could not get over this level, and smash back down into this range. I mean, we are really moving fast. I mean, look at the difference in the candles versus what we were doing back here. So the VIX was an indicator today that something wasn't right as well. That shot up like a rocket today, finished back over 20 from where it was yesterday. The VIX was up 26%. There was a big block of, we were talking about this in the trading room earlier. I did not see the order come through, or the creation come through today, but there was a huge block of VXX. It's very difficult to tell at the end of the day when they print these big, large blocks what they're doing. This block went up versus NAV yesterday. So, sorry, let me just get this situated right. Yesterday was 3, and if we bring up over 500,000 share blocks, you'll see that there was this large 3 million share block that went up yesterday, which, again, it's kind of impossible to tell what they're doing with that. It's trying to sometimes put together a piece of the puzzle, but there's 3 million shares that exchanged hands yesterday. And again, if you look at the NAV price of VXX, so I don't know, but there was also some VXX call buying yesterday, today. Really, I'll just advocate quickly, you don't have to be in my trading room if you're watching this video, but I mean, it really helps, I think, to to pay for someone to kind of watch over the tape and tell you what's going on, because the amount of buying, some of the comments that I made in the first half hour, and you could see them on Twitter, but the first half hour, which I like to summarize option flow the first half hour, and then once we get past, sometimes the first half hour of the day is quiet to begin with in option flow, and it's really between 10 to 11:30 where we see some action. But first half hour, I mentioned there was just put buying. And then that continued past the first couple of hours. So even before we broke down, so that's, and again, you don't have to pay for my subscription, but right into here before this was at 11:55 where we really broke. All that put buying was happening in here today. So that's the advantage that you get of being in a trading room. Like if you're trying to piece together, I know people do this because they just don't want to pay, but I know a lot of people on Twitter try to like piece together what guys like me and some other guys who follow option flow. It's really doing yourself a disservice to not pay like $100 a month. I mean, I don't, my subscription is $129 for a month. I mean, to get a heads up, because the majority of all this happened, I would say in here, before the sell-off happened. And, to see this kind of in your face and to see the, my commentary, which was saying today, hey, there's no call buying going on whatsoever. What's going on? So something was up, even if you weren't watching the headlines, even if you were just watching price. I said this last week too, when the market rallied really hard, we saw, there was no indication in the technicals that the IWM was going to rebound intraday like it did last Wednesday. And that's really the advantage that you get is, to see this flow a little bit ahead of time before, the averages really break is a huge advantage in my opinion. And it helped me. I mean, I went short the Qs, and then I started to look at some things. We were looking at Amazon. I mentioned in the room that I was like, if Amazon breaks, I think a lot of people were looking for it to break, which again, it's surprising, right? Because a lot of times you're looking for it to break one direction or another, or, to the top side, but it was sitting right inside value for the first, till about 11 o'clock. And then once it broke, so this is a great indicator to have on your, I'm really, mentioning a lot of things that we do on a day-to-day basis, but, having this indicator on your screens really helps. This is the break of value. And once we broke, basically, I mean, I honestly thought we would come back into here, but, here's the break of value and that's it. There's no support. So it was a really nice short if anybody took advantage of that today. But so we'll just have to kind of see. We got the holiday tomorrow. I'm going to cut the video off here. And the other thing that I've been advocating, again, the videos for information purposes only, but I've been talking about being right or wrong. I've been very positioned very neutrally. I was talking about utilities yesterday, which I had to get rid of my utility trade today because XLU did show a reversal bar, and I want to honor those. I want to honor those patterns. But, for me, yesterday, I took off most of my trades, my long trades, right around the open yesterday. And I continued to kind of study the charts and looked at some setups. But, I said, hey, let's give it a day after this kind of crazy move that we had yesterday. And, my P&L, I finished down slightly on the day, but up until about 2 o'clock today, I was in the green. So really positioning lightly and realizing that you may have, listen, I'm not in the camp of being a perma bull or perma bear. I think that we could really move sideways for a while. And while we're moving sideways, it is not, I think that you have to get a little bit used to buying puts and buying, not just buying calls. I think so many traders still have a very bullish mentality. There's a ton of people who are looking for doom and gloom too. I'm not in either one of these camps. But hey, if you can make money in puts as the market sells off like this, you're going to feel so much better. And I think really just having that view that, hey, we may not be just doing what we were doing for the last, so many years. So I think there's advantages on both sides of this market. And if you're confused, just trade very light, day trade a little bit more, and be very nimble. There's no reason that you have to figure this market out. And I've been saying this. Another thing that I've been saying is take this market day to day right now, because it's it's trendless right now, right? So anyway, that's it for today. Have a great night. See you tomorrow. See you on Thursday. Sorry.